Horizon. Do you know what a horizon is? The horizon? If we look, the horizon is where the sky meets the earth. And then, you know, at sunrise, we see the sun rise over the horizon. The horizon is when you look far out into the distance, it's where the sky meets the earth. Or when you're at sea. When I was a young man, I was in the Navy. I was a sailor. And we would always see the horizon. Everywhere you looked, there was a horizon, you know, when you were at sea. That's a horizon. Sparkle. Do you know what sparkled is? Sparkled is real shiny. On the rising wheat and barley. Let's look at that phrase, rising wheat and barley. What does that tell us about the wheat and the barley? The rising wheat and barley. If the wheat and the barley are rising, it means that it's still growing. The crop is still growing. It's not yet mature. It's not yet ready for harvest. The farmer in Wang Lung was diverted for an instant. What does diverted mean? Diverted. What does that mean for us? Yeah, it means that he was distracted. He was on his way to town, and then he saw the crops in the field. And because he's a farmer, he was interested in the crops. And so he stopped, and he was diverted from where he was going to pay attention to examine the crops. So he was diverted to examine. And when we examine something, what do? If you examine the crops, what are we doing? Examine means to inspect, to look at very, very carefully, very, very closely. So when we go to a physician and we're not feeling well, the physician will examine us. He'll take our blood pressure and he'll take different measurements. We'll use instruments to examine our health very, very closely. In this case, Wang Lung, because he's a farmer, he's very interested in how the crops are doing. He leans over and he examines the crops. And he notices, he stooped to examine the budding heads. So he's examining the little tiny blooms in the field, the barley and the wheat. And he noticed that they have not yet budded. He smelled the air. You know, farmers are very good about being able to predict the weather because they depend so heavily upon the weather. He smelled the air and looked anxiously. What does anxiously mean? Anxiously. He's worried. Yeah. He's concerned. If we're anxious about something, there's something that worries us. And so he's a farmer, and he knows that this crop that is not yet bloomed, is not yet ready for harvest, he's anxious about whether it will have sufficient rain, whether it will get enough rain, because he's a farmer. He smelled the air and looked anxiously at the sky. Rain was there, dark in the clouds, heavy upon the wind. He would buy a stick of incense and place it in the temple to the earth god. On a day like this, he would do it. So, even though he has very little money, and he has to decide whether to buy a little bit of extra beef for his wedding day or whether to shave his head, he's going to go and buy some incense to take to the temple because he thinks that's important for producing rain for the crop. So we learned some new words. Anxious, horizon, examine. Can you use those words in sentences tomorrow? Anxious, examine? Okay. Okay, so we're going to start on page 8 where it says, where it reads, he wound his way. So then let's see. Tassa, that would be with you.
He wound his way up in among the field up on the narrow path. In the near distance, the city wall arose, within that gate in the wall, through which he would pass, stood the guest house where the woman had been a slave girl since her childhood. The house of childhood. The house of and there were those who say, is it better to live alone than to marry a woman who has been a chef in a great house? But when he had said to his father, am I never to have a woman? His father replied, with wedding clothing, as they do in this evil days, and every woman wanting clothing and silk clothes before she will take a man, there remain only slave to be had for the poor.
Okay, so what else do we learn? What else do we learn about Wang Long? He's gone to the house of Huang, and this is apparently a very wealthy family. And the woman that he's going to marry is a slave who serves in the house of Huang. And some people say that you should not, marry a slave girl. The father says that, if you're poor, what other choice do you have? So this is the first that we really begin to learn about the woman who will come home to be his wife. She's been a slave in the house of Huang. And then, let's see, Chop, why don't you read a few more lines for us?
His father had stirred himself then and gone to the house of one and asked if there were a slave to spare, not a slave too young, and above all, not a pretty one. He had said, Wang Long had suffered, that she must not be pretty. It would be something to have a pretty wife, that other men would congratulate him upon having. His father, seeing his mountainous face, had cried out at him. And what will we do with a pretty woman? We must have a woman who will tend the house and bear children as she works. Be forever thinking about in the field and will a pretty woman do these things? She will be forever thinking about clothes to go with her face. No, not a pretty woman in our house. We are farmers. Moreover, who has heard of a pretty slave who was working in a wealthy house called the young robber? Have had their fill of her. It's better to be first with an ugly woman than the 100 with a beauty. Do you imagine a pretty woman will think your farmer's hands as pleasing as the soft hands of a rich man's sons, and your sunblock face as beautiful as the golden skin of the others who have had her for their pleasures.